Keith Rozelle, it is a pleasure to see you here today. I'm so happy you've joined me on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast.
Pete, thank you so much for being courageous enough to invite me on.
Well, I've enjoyed some of our conversations on Clubhouse in Catherine Brown's room, and she's been a guest here on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast as well in the past. And, we were chatting around sales is such an important piece of the puzzle, for every entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what you do, we're always selling, and it's just one of those big things. And, I loved this sort of idea here today around creating a marvelous sales pitch. And as you are the sales marvel, I'm excited here today to dig into the conversation around creating your perfect sales pitch.
Yeah. Now, it's a term that's much overused,
Yeah.
Pete, but we'll get into the guts of why it's really important in a second, I'm sure. So I'm please carry on.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's when you say it's overused, how do you mean? How do you mean that it's overused?
I tell you what, I don't know what it's like your side of the Atlantic, but over here in the United Kingdom, sales is not a very highly respected
Mm,
profession.
yeah.
And the moment you say sales pitch, people kind of bring down the shutters, bring down the barriers. And so selling is a much more sophisticated profession, I think, and endeavor than what you might see on the Wolf of Wall Street or whatever it was, where that was a canned pitch made back in the 1980s, which is absolutely where it belongs. Sales is a very different animal these days, rightly so. But the sales pitch is absolutely important because everything stems. If you've got the pitch right, that means you've got a qualified client who's in the market for doing what you do, what's the benefits that you deliver, and so the sale is just a natural conclusion to that well qualified conversation where they're pulling the product out of your hands or service out of your hands rather than you shoving it down their throat. And that's what I mean by a sales pitch.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, so many times it's people don't want to feel as though they're being sold, but nonetheless, they do have a problem. And how I kind of pose this is okay, you understand what their problem is. You have your unique solution to deal with that problem so that they can have a better life because everybody buys a better life. And so many entrepreneurs have a hard time explaining that in language that actually makes sense and that they can communicate not only to their clients but internally to their team and to all their other suppliers. And why don't you kind of guide us through the creation of this platform and your value add and the generation of this so that you can actually communicate it properly.
Yes, really good point. So many business owners of businesses of all size, whether it's just you or whether there's 100,000 people in your company, a lot of managers, directors, and all of those people, they're just so close to the business
Yeah.
that they have a real hard time actually articulating the benefits that their business, how you transform your customers' lives, how you make their lives better.
Yeah,
Because otherwise, why would you buy something if it's not
exactly.
going to enhance your life in some way? That's what it comes down to. So, just a little bit of background, Pete, if I may, is that this is not something I made up at a market stall. This is the learning that I got from this was on the job, if you like, in a pretty big outsourcing deal. I sold software and IT outsourcing for a long, long time. And I did a deal with a big telco organization, UK based telco organization, worth well over $1 billion.
Wow.
And there were 18 other organizations, IT outsourcers. You can guess at least half of them, I'm sure. They were all vying for the same piece of business because who doesn't want
Yeah.
to win a piece of business like that? And so I was able to craft through working with some very clever people exactly what we did in 60 seconds and how that was different to the others. not because I'm so brilliant with words, although I'd like to think I'm reasonable, but because I took
Yeah.
all the assets of our ecosystem that through the organization that I was working with, and I'm not here to advertise them, and laid that out in 60 seconds flat for a customer. So that whether they were the most junior person in IT or the most senior person in finance, they were able to get it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to lay out a bit of an equation for some of the mathematicians in your
I
audience.
think that's great. And I
That
mean, that
that
step-by-step
would be okay.
equation is exactly what we need here. With the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast, we're always trying to bring those sort of action items. How can I take this and do it for my own business? So love to
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah. So your value proposition is equal to your offer. I'll break these down in a second. Your offer plus the benefits that you deliver, plus two case studies, plus your target market and a clear call to action. So those are the component parts. And if I may, I'm gonna use technology as an example because, and I hope I'm going to get your phone ringing with some really, um, with some really fired up people, Pete. Because technology companies have a lot to answer for here. So if you're selling laptops and they can't help but tell you it's got an i7 or an i9 processor and it's got 16 gig of RAM, the average customer doesn't care about that. They care about what the laptop can do for them. So the very fact that it's got all that memory is interesting. But what do I really care about? I really care about the benefits, which is I can multitask. I can have my email running while I'm making a presentation, while I'm on the internet, doing all those things. Those are the benefits. That's the so what test of why it's important to me. So many people get stuck down in the weeds on features.
Yes,
They don't go to benefits.
exactly.
And in and of itself, that's where we need to be is benefits. How do I transform my customers' lives?
Awesome.
That's where we're trying to get to.
Yeah. I think from that side of things, that's so important. I mean, we own some shoe stores, and to talk about the technologies in the shoes. I mean, some people want that information, but what they really want to know is it going to look good on me, and is it going to make me feel good, right? And so the language
Plus,
around that, right? And
and I'm in Yorkshire, which is in the north of England, and they are renowned for being, how should we say, very frugal with
right,
cash. Okay, so how long is it going to
yeah,
last? How long is it going to stay
right.
pristine? Those are really important things.
Yeah,
Uh,
awesome. So what's the next step? What's the next step here,
okay,
Keith, in building
yes.
this
So
out?
once you've got the benefits, then it's a case of okay. So who are your customer cases? Where are your case studies? And the ideal thing is that you can present a case study where your company has excelled, where you've really delivered benefits in the context of a customer that looks exactly like the prospect that you're talking to right now. So I could say to you, Pete, I've delivered my sales transformation services for lots of shoe store owners, not maybe direct competitors of
Yeah,
yours, and so the point is that Pete, you would say, well, Keith's done it for Fred round the corner for me. There's a good chance that he'll be able to do it for me. Whereas if I gave you a case study that was the same size company, but I don't know, they were a trust bank
yes,
or a savings
yeah,
bank, you might think,
mm,
well, okay, they're the same size, but they don't really, what's that got to do with selling shoes?
exactly.
And the answer is, of course, very little. So it needs to feel like it's similar to you. So there's some comfort, forgive the pun
Yeah,
with
no,
shoes, but there's
absolutely.
some comfort that goes with that case study. That's the point.
Yeah, no, I that association is such an important piece. I mean, we're always trying to associate things in order to make the language around it seem more familiar on the sales floor too, right? I mean, no matter what you're selling, you're always trying to bring in those associations. So I think that's great. And setting it out in that sort of 60-second pitch, even getting the language down to craft that story within it must be sort of difficult to get that like the story could be 60 seconds, let alone just that component.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that is very dependent on the kind of audience that you're addressing, that you're delivering the pitch to. So if it's biotech,
Yeah.
and food research is a case in point where I work for one particularly large client at the moment, where there's jargon uh, all over the
Yeah.
place. Now, if I'm talking to the CFO of that organization, as I have done before, what I try to do is I try to talk about it in their terms about how's it going to affect their bottom line,
Hmm.
not about how many speeds and feeds and RAM and all of this kind of stuff. What does it do? How does it transform that CFO's life? How does it make them sleep better at night, to use the old kind of hackneyed phrase? So one's target market also. So there's the jargon thing about be careful. So you can use jargon, but use jargon that's relevant to the person you're talking to. This is not about impressing yourself. This is about impressing your audience, right? Okay. So, and then your target market, to demonstrate that actually they are in your target market. There's every chance they'll make this project, this program, a success for us because they feel more comfortable because you've got that credibility in that area. Vitally important.
I love that. Keith, um, we've got 7 steps in your document, and we're gonna. I'll put a link in the show notes here so that they can download the 7 steps to create your elevator pitch. And we're not gonna have time to hit all 7 of them here today. So why don't you kick us off with one last one, and then if anybody wants to dig down deeper into how those 7 steps, they can download the document. And like I said, I'll include it in our show notes for sure. But hit us with one final one here that you really think is going to make a difference for our listeners today.
Yeah, so I'm a mathematician at heart, and that's probably why I went to an equation. So I would say be bold, use numbers. I want to give you a very quick case in point. I did a sales turnaround project for one of the top 1% management schools in the world, based up in the northwest of England, a little while ago. The academics, now I've never even been to university before, so it's a bit of an irony, me working in that kind of environment. However, I think I do know sales quite well. So 8 weeks into the project, we've turned it around. We've got the number of applicants for this exec MBA course that they were after. And I overheard two academics speaking to one another, sort of a sidebar conversation. And they said, "Do you know we're number one again for corporate strategy?" And I stopped the meeting and I said, "Hey, Martin," because that was his name, Martin, I did I hear that correct? Number one, where is that? Number one in England, number one in the northwest of England. What is that? And he said, no, number one in the world.
Wow.
And I said, in the what? What do you mean? Better than Harvard? Yes, better than McGill. Yes, better than McGill. You know what? I could have really done with knowing that 8 weeks ago when I started the program.
Yeah.
Because if you were in an American institution or a North American institution, that would have been drilled into you day one. So be bold. My advice is be bold, cite numbers. If you're number one, everyone's number one in the world at something. They really are. You have to think a little bit about it first. But everyone can be number one or part of a very small group. You think about it hard, you will get there. So that was my advice. Be bold, use numbers because they contextualize really, really well.
Love that. I love that. And thanks so much for sharing. And thanks so much for being here on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast, Keith. It's been a pleasure. If people want to reach out to you, how do they reach out to you and how can they download this document? Like I said, I will put it in the show notes, but let them know.
No, thank you for that. Well, first of all subscribers to my website, which is www.salesmarvel.co.uk, and at the very top of the screen, you'll see a banner. If you subscribe to the website, which is free, it'll give you a download. You can download those 7 tips to create your perfect pitch, and I'd love to hear from you. What have you done with that? I'd love. There have been some amazing pitches that have come through that really it's like a home run. So I want to hear about those successes. That really motivates me as well. So please do download to your heart's content.
Haha, right on. And I know you're active on LinkedIn too, Keith, as am I. So I think that's probably another good way to get a hold of you, right?
Very good way. By all means, connect in with me. So I'm just Keith, Keith, Rozelle, Rozelle. There's only one of us. So connect up with me there. I'd love to hear from you. And ask me any questions that you want. I just love helping.
Right
And
on.
I hope I've simplified this for your listeners
I love
and
it too,
viewers.
Keith. Thanks so much and make it a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Look forward to it. Take care.